Hi everyone, this week we had several chapters to read, and this video is going to begin with Chapter 5 in Daniel's et al. Up to this point, we have learned about short writing activities that focused on thinking, learning, and exploring subject matter. The short writing to learns often became the seed or kernel of longer, more polished pieces that, after further development, revision, and editing, goes public. This chapter switches gears and provides us with ways to help kids develop papers. No matter the age of the writers we work with, students must be directly taught the distinctive features of public writing. Students need to understand what it means to put aside the powerful personal tools of writing to learn and be able to write for an audience. The traits of public writing are substantial in length, not short, planned, not spontaneous, authoritative, not exploratory, conforming to conventions, not informal, directed at an outside audience, not written for the writer, composed in successive drafts, not a single attempt, crafted, copy edited, and correct, not unedited, and ready to be assessed by their audience. It is difficult to get our students to live up to the high standards and exacting criteria that public writing entails. How do we get our students to be proud of their writing and produce spectacular pieces? There are key factors that can make a difference. The first factor is choice. When students are given a choice, it creates a feeling of ownership and their engagement is elevated. Next, students need time to write in class. Students will write better with teacher support along the way. They need side-by-side coaching, modeling, and mentoring throughout all stages of the process. Finally, response. Students need to be provided with confirmation, suggestions, and advice. It helps them avoid pitfalls, revise and rewrite effectively, and better gauge the potential reactions of their audience. Both teachers and fellow students can provide feedback along the way. Students are exposed to examples of great writing in English class when they read texts like Shakespeare and Twain. Daniels et al. States that the writing model students are exposed to in other subject areas like history, science, and math could be dull and boring textbooks. Students need to be exposed to more examples, models, templates, and samples of good writing in each field of study. One question we would like you to consider this week is what type of readings can you use in your content area that model good writing? Cite at least one good example to share. In Chapter 6, Daniels et al. States that the first step in building a classroom where good writing gets done and deep learning accompanies it is to create a climate in which students are willing to tackle new and challenging tasks, ask for help, and really explore ideas instead of dutifully completing each step. It is important to establish constructive purposes for student writing. Showing students that your aim is to help them and not just catch them making mistakes is important and builds positive climate for writing. Providing students with a real audience not only clarifies the writing task, but also guides particular choices of wording, length, and organization. It also changes the teacher's role from judge, jury, and executioner to a team coach who helps students become more successful in the writing process. Students need to see how writing happens by proper modeling by the teacher. This is often called a write aloud. This shows the thought process, organization, and risks one must take while writing. This strategy is extremely valuable and effective. We all know that teachers' time is limited, and sometimes we can't get to each student. But by having students work together to provide feedback to each other, the teacher can provide more strategic guidance. There are years of research that show that marking up students' paper is ineffective because students don't learn from it, and it sends a negative signal that you are about finding faults instead of helping them learn. If teachers focus on just one aspect at a time, they can help students notice it in their own writing. In this section, Daniels et al. Reviews some major steps in the writing process and provides some activities to support them. Before writing activities. These activities get students to think about potential topics. Two different strategies for giving writing a sense of purpose and social meaning before students hear what the assignment will be are Four Corners and Anticipation Guide. Gathering information and ideas. Students can gather information and ideas individually or in small teams, and each can focus on a different aspect of the topic, educating each other. Some various ways to handle this are advanced preparation, jigsaw reading, and using the internet. Organization. Having students create outlines, follow certain set structures, or looking at samples are ways to get student writers to help their readers follow their line of thinking. Drafting. Once students have the information they need, they can start writing a draft, right? Well, sometimes writers get stuck. Four-card stud is a pre-writing trick that can help. Students need time to let their writing rest. Real understanding takes time. Have students plan a break from writing and return to it with a fresh, clear mind. Reviewing and revising. It is important for students to make sure that their writing is clear, organized, complete, and says what they intend it to say. Feedback at this step can come in the form of the teacher or fellow students. Students need to make sure their writing will reach their audience and serves its purpose. Providing a real audience can make a student's writing real. Polishing. Polishing is getting ready for the public. It involves things like fixing grammar and correcting spelling errors. One strategy is reading aloud. The writer sometimes can spot all sorts of errors when reading to a partner or group. Publishing. When only a teacher sees the final outcome of a writing assignment, students only care about a grade. There are plenty of audiences who would love to hear from your students. It changes the role of the teacher from critic to publisher and motivates the students. A few of the potential audiences students can share their work include classmates, adult panels, other students in the school or elsewhere, special interest groups and organizations, government and business leaders, experts in a particular field, and contest judges. How do we make the assessment of writing part of the learning process, rather than just a way to rank students? How do we keep kids engaged in the actual content instead of just thinking about getting the test over with? Daniels et al. Provides a few essentials that will, in any content area, classroom, help answer these questions. Individual goal setting is having students set individual goals for writing and writing down things they could most improve on, having individual conferences with the teacher. Marking papers. Teachers don't need to mark all the errors. They should mark a few if a pattern exists and have students find the rest and fix them in return. Responsibility sheets. Have students keep a list of writing skills that they have learned. Rubrics take the mystery out of writing by providing students with a list of things the teacher will look for, but don't be too rigid so that it punishes the kid who discovers a great way to explain something differently. And long-range reflection. Have students stop periodically to look over their work and express writing how they see it. In Chapter 7, Daniels et al. Presents 6 public writing projects that are playful, creative, and engaging. They include people research, faction, raft, brochure, newspaper front page, and web page. Daniels et al. States that traditional term papers plunge students into the hardest kind of research too soon. So before sending them off to the library to do research on abstract ideas, they should have practice analyzing data that is more concrete, tangible, human, and fun. 2 types of this kind of research that can be used in any subject are questionnaires or surveys and interviews. Faction is the marriage of factual research and imagination. Historical and science fiction are the most popular genres that capture this kind of writing. The writer researches a topic and weaves a fictional story around the facts that both educates and entertains the reader. Faction can be used as an alternative form of assessment and gives students a chance to personalize their learning. Raft is an acronym that stands for Role, Audience, Format, and Topic. Students create faction that is built around answers to 4 questions. Who am I? Who needs to read this? What is the format? What is the subject I'm covering? Raft is most suitable as a closure activity to provide students with a way to demonstrate what they have learned during the unit of study. Brochures. Brochures are attention grabbers. They have colorful, inviting graphics and a quick read nature about them. Brochures can easily be adapted to many classroom topics across all content areas. Writers must condense text to the most essential information, but at the same time, reach their audience with interesting information about the topic. Brochures work well as summative activities, review before a test, or as an alternative form of assessment. Newspaper front pages are great summary activities. Kids become the reporters, asking the who, what, when, where, why, and how. Students write a couple of short, interesting articles that leave the reader wanting more. Writing on the web rather than on a sheet of paper merges technology with writing and promotes digital literacy skills. This connects kids with what they are already using outside the classroom. Because web page design can be very time-consuming, it is often reserved for big projects that happen once or twice a year. The target audience moves beyond the classroom and makes the work highly motivating for students. Another question we would like you to consider this week is, what public writing project can you see incorporating into your content area?
Hello guys, and thank you for taking the time to listen. You just heard Regina's portion of our content this week. I will be speaking to you about Writing Instruction That Works by Appleby and Langer. In the chapters we had to read this week, it covered all disciplinary areas. Due to the high demand of state testing, we decided to focus on the content presented in language arts and math. When considering the demands of complex writing in the 21st century, there are several characteristics of effective writing instruction that should be implied in English language arts curricula. The following characteristics are curricular cohesion, an emphasis on authentic discussion practices promoting student inquiry, opportunities for students to collaborate around complex tasks, and explicit instruction in writing strategies. The next 2 slides are going to give us an overview of the standards. So, according to Appleby and Langer this week, these Common Core State Standards offer a way for reflection, but do not outline a curriculum to prescribe a specific approach to teaching. So, thoughts to consider: do you feel some of these standards have a higher emphasis versus others? Writing in the LAL classroom seems to focus mainly on preparing students for high-stakes testing by incorporating critical analysis of issues or a text, student response interpretation, explanations of subject area concepts, persuasive writing, personal essays, or personal narratives. Fewer teachers in LAL focused on problem solving and inquiry throughout their writing instruction. We also have to be aware of using technology, including the internet, to produce and publish writing, while conducting short research projects to answer a question, drawing on several resources that may be available to us. So, breaking news. Still of concern, however, is the widespread trend in English classrooms to mirror the kind of writing asked for high-stakes tests. In this week's reading, they discussed the importance of the revision process in the LAL classroom and had students revise their classmates' writing, not focusing on spelling, but asking authentic questions and focusing on content and clarity. Writing in LAL should emphasize authentic discussion and writing tasks based on inquiry. It requires students to demonstrate their knowledge and understanding. We need to break away from mirroring high-stake tests. In this chapter, many teachers focus writing on engaging students, while also covering the Common Core state standards. We saw process-oriented instruction in Ms. Rudolph's class, small learning communities in Ms. Green's class, and connecting multiple writing strategies across the curriculum at College View. Several writing strategies that were presented include show me paragraphs, snapshots, thought shot, and exploded moments. When assigning writing strategies to students, it is important to provide an effective writer's checklist that students can use to analyze their work. This slide shows the personal writing checklist from Appleby and Langer on page 45. This strategy leaves students with a record of what they did as well as a reflection. Think about how a checklist like this can be used within your content area or class. What changes would you make, if any? We need to begin to shift from the Common Core state standards and organize curriculum around the big ideas that are appropriate to the study of literature, language, and composition, and to the grade level of the class. Teachers need to explicitly teach strategies for generating ideas, drafting, revising, and editing. Writing tasks should be implemented as a way for students to demonstrate their knowledge and understanding of the English content, while engaging in a wide variety of writing tasks. If you teach language arts, think about your own classroom. Are you incorporating writing tasks for varied audiences and purposes, while giving attention to argument, informative, and expository and narrative tasks of the Common Core? If not, how can you improve your instruction? What changes can you make to contribute to the successful teaching practices that are expected in the language arts classroom? These are not questions I expect you to answer, but thoughts to consider. In Chapter 5 in Appleby and Langer, they focus on writing in mathematics. Unlike in other subjects, the writing that occurs in mathematics is a little different, and as a mathematics teacher myself, I feel it needs more attention given to. Paul Connolly states, given that mathematics has its own symbol system, through which practitioners can think and express themselves, it is not immediately apparent why a second natural written language is helpful to learning or how exactly it might serve a class in learning mathematics. Let's stop and think about what this means for math teachers. Currently, the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics is requiring more student engagement with writing in the math classroom. But how can we implement writing instruction into the mathematics classroom that actually works? So let's start with the basics. Students first need to understand the why and how it is important in the mathematics classroom. This goes back to teachers making content culturally relevant and giving students the opportunity to write, read, and listen in math. When students are engaged with multiple instructional strategies, they communicate to learn mathematics, and they learn to communicate mathematically. Although many teachers are aware of the benefits of incorporating higher-ordered math tasks, and writing a national survey has shown 100% of mathematics teachers reported having students complete numerical calculations. Now, this can be problematic. If the Common Core state standards is emphasizing reasoning, justification, and explanation, why are we focusing on numerical calculations? So let's dig deeper. Chapter 5 presented us with exemplar teaching examples of what can be in math and writing. All of these examples demonstrated effective writing strategies that should be implemented in a mathematics classroom. Ms. Burke had students engage in a project that focused on triangle theorems. This project was called Gone to the Dogs. The overall purpose of this project was for students to construct a short story about building a doghouse for a cold dog. Students were required to diagram a roof on a coordinate plane, determine how to make 4 congruent trusses by using various triangle theorems, and calculate and rationalize material costs. When we discuss mathematically rich tasks, these are the types of tasks we need more of in the classroom. It requires students to complete multiple steps and provide students with the opportunity to write a narrative and have math be the driving force behind it. Another example shown this week was Miss Decker, who engaged her students in writing about fractions. This writing task focused on making connections to real-world experiences where students were asked to explore the connection between fraction operations and baking. This project consisted of a multi-draft, peer-edited, expository essay assignment to help her students learn the operations with fractions. They had to create a procedural recipe through 6 paragraphs. To scaffold this lesson, graphic organizers were handed out, and students were required to complete 3 drafts. In Mr. Petrov's, he focused on utilizing open response questions in the mathematics classroom. Open response questions require students to explain, describe, or justify mathematical calculations. Not only do these tasks appear on high-stake testing, but they also emphasize the why and how that is required in the mathematical classroom. And lastly, we saw in this chapter was Ms. Hugo. She wanted students to move beyond technical explanations and use layman's terms. This task focused on a quiz given in an AP statistics course, where students were required to answer several questions about the study by drawing conclusions and generalizing. They were asked to explore statistics through writing by justification and thinking more deeply about the statistical knowledge in real-world applications. So what's next? We need students to move beyond the algorithmic nature of mathematical calculations and recompose mathematical knowledge in different formats for different purposes. Students need opportunities to be consumers and producers of math and to make meaningful connections. Students need to be asked to provide written justification for why a mathematical statement is true. Prompts need to ask students to explain, describe, or justify, which will promote student understanding and help develop students' understanding of math. Future directions in the mathematics classrooms requires graphic organizers that will help students become consumers of math. On this slide, I am showing a graphic organizer that utilizes POW. P represents pulling apart the problem. O is for organizing. Think about what the task is asking for and what important details are present. Lastly, W stands for write. When engaging in the writing process, it is important for students to remember to construct multiple drafts, label parts, reread out loud, edit, and revise. If math is not your area of focus, do you think this graphic organizer would be useful? What changes would you make, if any? The Common Core State Standards emphasizes argument and explanation, challenging students cognitively, having students promote their reasoning, and critiquing others through written justification. I feel the picture on this slide demonstrates the overall purpose of school that educators need to remember. It is not about teaching to a test, yet having our students become consumers of knowledge that know how to think for themselves. This is a skill that is needed in the 21st century workplace. Take action. Let's begin and use multiple writing strategies within all content areas. This slide displays several right-to-learn strategies that we have seen, and each one has a relevant role in education today. The last chapter that was required for this week was Chapter 10, Reclaiming Writing in the Academic Disciplines. This chapter focused on the overall purpose of writing instruction. In the opening paragraph on page 172, it states around 80% of the written assignments students do requires very little composing. With all the evidence and success stories we have seen in previous chapters, why are we not having students compose? Teachers today are realizing that there are disciplinary types of writing, as well as discipline-specific vocabulary that are important for success. There are several broad features or practices that make a difference in teaching writing. Teachers need to recognize that writing is an integral part of a disciplinary knowledge, and the emphasis on extended writing of various types and lengths is important. There are many opportunities offered by the Common Core State Standards to enrich students' content learning through writing. All of the writing activities presented taught writing as a way to learn content and teach the forms and conventions of ways to write within the discipline. These tasks require students to reconfigure what they are learning in the process of making their new ideas more explicit and weaving new connections within what they are learning. Choose one topic in your content and create a writing template or graphic organizer that would be useful towards your students, and consider how it would make their ideas more explicit. While the standards focus on what is most essential, they do not describe all that can or should be taught. A great deal is left to the discretion of teachers and curriculum developers. The aim of the standards is to articulate the fundamentals, not to set out an exhaustive list or set of restrictions that limits what can be taught beyond what is specified herein. Although teachers do understand the importance of including writing throughout the disciplinary subjects, many teachers are still teaching towards the test. Appleby and Langer mentioned that 9% of middle and high school students may be doing no writing at all. Only occasionally are students engaged in activities that harness the power in writing and are engaged through the exploration of new concepts. The Common Core State Standards are guidelines, and the goal is to tap deeper understandings that will be expressed in writing. Challenges are ahead. We must maintain a rich and broad curriculum, avoid formalic approaches to the teaching of writing, teach argument well, and embed literacy in work appropriate to the discipline. Let's reflect. Are we truly preparing our students for the workplace? This week, we saw many write-to-learn strategies through disciplinary subjects that integrated writing in meaningful ways. As we have seen, when the stakes are high with the Common Core State Standards, it may be difficult to limit the curriculum around formalic approaches to typical assessment tasks. If rich writing tasks that support developing and understandings and interpretations become a central part of the assessment system, then it will be a big step for us to move towards to prepare our students for the cognitive and social demands of the 21st century workplace. Nationwide, it is evident that the goals have changed, and therefore it is time throughout all disciplines to include writing instruction that works. Investigate the following. Investigate the writing standards within your content. Come up with a write-to-learn strategy you feel would be an exemplar for that Common Core State Standard. Make sure you name the Common Core State Standard you are addressing and why your exemplar models that standard. This week, we included several questions that can be based off this week's reading. Your job is to choose one of the questions posed and give your thoughts on that specific question. When thinking about your content area and the usage of writing, I want you to reflect on the past digital journal entries. Try to respond this week in another format besides a constructive paragraph.